Hello dear friends, today I want to record a video that will clarify some points. Most people don't understand those. This will be especially useful for those who are seeing me for the first time today. We will talk about the peace negotiations, which are supposedly actively taking place right now, and about where this should lead. I noticed that most people, about 90%, don't understand how this will work, as seen in comments across social networks, not just mine, and they act naively. But not because people are bad or stupid, but because everyone is hooked on a certain informational needle. Look, it was just announced that there will soon be another round of negotiations in Istanbul between Ukraine and Russia. It's planned for the last few days. Well, let's put it this way, the last week of June, so we have to wait more than 3 weeks. Let's say it's 3 weeks. I want to tell you right away that there's a very high chance this particular round of negotiations simply won't happen, but even if it does, I don't want you to have any false expectations about it, and to direct you to the points where it's really worth expecting some changes and real progress in ending this war. Let's start by relying on the memorandum that both sides have prepared and submitted. There are two nuances that won't allow this peace to be concluded in the stated format. So, what's happening now is just an imitation of diplomacy. You might ask, what are the 2 points? First, Putin won't sign anything with Zelensky because Putin doesn't consider Zelensky to be an independent actor. Putin wants de facto, let me emphasize de facto, to sign an agreement with the United States of America. How this will look de jure we'll discuss separately. In the Russian memorandum, everything is negotiable except one point. Withdraw your troops, return Zaporizhia, parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. Because that's in our constitution. So, this cannot be done. Not even because of Zelensky. No president of Ukraine would agree to this. And everything is clear here. There's nothing even to discuss. The point about why Putin won't sign with Zelensky, this point can be reconsidered. How? I'll tell you. Announce elections in Ukraine and say, we have elections, let's agree to a 30-day ceasefire so we can hold them peacefully. The new president was inaugurated. And of course, as you understand, with a new president who is truly authorized by the people, the conversation will be completely different and Trump will behave differently. You might say, Dreamer, that's impossible. Yes, it is. Do you know why? Because Zelensky is not going to give up power. Zelensky is not going to hand over power. And today, that's exactly why the whole country is being held hostage by the president and the entire situation. A solution will be shared at the end of the video. Look, imagine this. Especially for new people, I'm explaining. Imagine that a truce or even peace has been established. You can call it along the current line of demarcation. Why does Putin need this? The buildup continues and they're turning Ukraine into anti-Russia, but not in the sense that we are truly anti-Russia. We have to be the complete opposite of Russia. Look at how things are done in Russia and do everything radically differently, but we've been pumped up as anti-Russia. It's like opposing and distancing ourselves from Russia, but at the same time, who will you be there? A dictatorship, an authoritarian regime, or just Russia 2.0, but under the Ukrainian flag and with a different dictator, a different last name? That's already a secondary question for the architects of this format from the Ukrainian side. If the world has come together like this, but people keep bickering among themselves about language, about religion, as I said, this build-up continues. So what was the point? If it's obvious that the problem hasn't been solved, the sore remains, then you should expect a new war. I'm not even talking about Putin's side. Why would he end the war like this, if what he calls the problem hasn't been solved this way? That means we're in a complete dead end. How to solve this issue and what the sides will eventually come to, just watch and see. I don't know the date when this will be finalized, signed, and so on. I'm telling you the solution to the problems because you're watching right now. 1,000 different experts, political analysts, politicians and talkers are telling you, we'll get some territories back through diplomatic means. The question is, how? Tell me, how are you going to get any territories back through diplomatic means? You won't get an answer, and you won't get an answer on how to get out of this dead end. Let me emphasize again in my statements, I'm not coming from what I would like. I wouldn't want any of this at all, but you would. In our fantasies, what we want there. I'm discussing the bitter truth of today's reality. So, to the point, Ukraine will change its structure to a de facto federal system. which will be a hybrid with autonomous zones. For those who are not familiar with what I'm talking about, I explained this in detail in one of my streams. You can find it by the timestamps. Italy lives perfectly well with autonomy, and in Spain, de jure, there is no federalization, but de facto that's exactly how it's structured. To simplify matters, there's the term complete decentralization. And so, some regions that are currently controlled by Putin could return to us as autonomous regions and already as part of a federal Ukraine. This is the only way out of the situation that will satisfy the Kremlin and which will solve our problems. What is our internal problem? It's that a group of people, a certain category of people, wants to turn Ukraine into one big trench. As you saw on my Telegram channel, there was that awful video of children being forced to sing a song. We're being indoctrinated to believe we can catch rockets with our hands, which will lead to a new war, and the desire to make everyone the same. Like I already said, speaking one language, having one religion, sharing the same views. As soon as you step even slightly outside the boundaries of propaganda and these dictatorial tendencies and the dictator's propaganda agenda, you're instantly an enemy, labeled Ruski, and everything you own must be taken, with threats of expulsion, imprisonment, or worse. If you're not with us, you're against us. Does this make sense? Does it really match the supposedly declared ideology, the ideology and the course towards the West? No, that's impossible in the West. And even with all the problems of the European Union, in the European Union today you can't discriminate against anyone. And there is the European Charter of Languages which excludes all of this from the start. It can't be a problem there. Why is no one proposing this today? America knows Ukraine well, but doesn't quite grasp the situation, although they've already acknowledged that Ukraine is a very complicated country. And I keep telling you, Ukraine is a very complicated country. We have a very complicated situation. There won't be an easy solution. These are just fairy tales, and having an office for simple solutions isn't possible here. Zelensky will never propose something like that to President Trump. That's the first thing. Why? Because, of course, his political future would be over after that. This device will be operated by a completely new person. Let me tell you something a bit different. There will be 3 stages. The first is a technical memorandum, then the conclusion of a full peace, and then the signing of documents that will essentially confirm some changes to the political map of Europe. Please don't yell at me or scream in the comments, it's not my fault. I didn't destroy or betray Ukraine, others did. Basically, you all know the names. And the second thing is the elections. Zelensky all the more won't go for this. Because what would he run on if the elections were announced right now? Things are bad on all fronts. Yes, this operation to destroy Russia's strategic aviation, he might try to latch on to that, but it only gives a temporary effect, undermining the defenses of the Crimean Bridge a little, and then using that for 3 days of public relations. But this is what they're capable of. Creating ratings, and notice, promoting certain names that they're clearly preparing for politics. I'm not even mentioning this circus, although actually I am. I shared on Telegram that Zelensky spent a year planning this operation on Russian aviation and led it himself. Do you believe that? Well, can you really believe that? Then you have a problem. If you say now that since this is federalization, it's separatism, no, I'm suggesting this specifically to preserve Ukraine, not to break it up, and federalization does not lead to collapse. We lost 30% of our territory under a unitary system. This fact shatters any hypotheses of those who don't fully understand what I'm talking about. Therefore, as I already said, seeing all these new negotiations and rounds of talks, the parties won't come to any agreement. Because there are 2 impossible conditions that I already mentioned. Everything else can be discussed, they can exchange prisoners. Yes, that's also very important, I don't argue with that, but that's not what Trump's team or even Erdogan's team is working day and night for. We won't make any progress globally, so what's the solution? I believe everyone watching the video so far is waiting for an answer. By the way, subscribe to the channel right now, leave a like, and comment at the end about what you think about this. What's the solution? The solution is, don't be shocked, you just need to wait a little, about 3 months. Why? Because there needs to be a collapse of trust, a real one. We'll get back to this in a moment. A collapse of society's trust in this regime after that. Our allies from the United States, maybe others, might be able to step in and influence things so that everything moves forward without a real collapse of trust. A real collapse of trust is when the absolute majority of Ukraine's residents, or let's say Ukrainian citizens, even those abroad, completely and openly admit to themselves, we are at a dead end. The current leader of Ukraine will not achieve anything. He doesn't know where he's going. He has driven us into a terrible situation with no way out in this format. I've already proven to you why, and you just need to admit it. Right now, a lot of people have admitted it, but a lot is still not as many as we need. The signal for you will be when the hamsters, wearing green glasses and delighted, start telling everyone how amazing and powerful everything is. They should shout, "We were deceived." And this will happen after certain events that, according to my calculations, will take place around the end of August or in the fall, at the beginning of fall, in the first half of fall. You will all see these signals. If, for some reason, you can't recognize these signals, subscribe to my Telegram right here on YouTube and you will see when these processes begin. I want to stress I'm not asking for any action. You don't need to do anything. There just needs to be a collapse of trust, and then the forces that are currently helping us in this situation and basically organizing all these negotiations will get involved. You just need to understand that even this imitation of democracy wouldn't exist without Trump in the first place. And of course, Erdogan is doing a lot. That is, the two sides are not able to agree on this. Many people already take these negotiations for granted. Yes, no, a huge amount of work was done, which of course will simply go to waste. That's how things are. And there is simply no other option. There is simply no other option. If a person is holding the whole country hostage, all the residents, all the citizens, dooming them to drown in blood, turning Ukraine into one big trench, depriving it of a future. Well, history will deal with this. History will deal with the person and will handle the situation because there's no other way, and he denies it and he doesn't want it. But this can't last forever. You have to agree, we're reaching that boiling point. Many people will learn the truth about those issues that are now being used to make money, to gain publicity, to deceive you and the whole world. There's a lot of dirt. And you'll understand how we all donate, how some people die at the front, lose their health, while others, in fact, felt pretty good and essentially were destroying our Ukraine. That's how things are. I'm waiting for your comments, write to me, and finally, please listen one more time. I've published this before, Vyacheslav Chernovyl's speech, where he was already proposing federalization. If it had happened, we wouldn't have the situation we have today. Ukraine is home to diverse people, all Ukrainians, and there's no reason to separate anyone by geography or other traits. Hasn't it already been figured out how to solve this issue? By the way, I recently mentioned on my stream the list of successful federal countries, and all federal countries are successful, 99%, so the ball is in your court.
Once, when I proposed the idea of a federal system for Ukraine, my opponents didn't understand it. I compare this to Yugoslavia, a federation of states based on nationality, and the Soviet Union, which was also called a federation. That's why now in my program I don't write about a federal system, but instead about regional, very local self-government. Moreover, I always say that this can't be done right now, but only in the more distant future. As I just explained, it's not 25 regions, but 12 or 13 territories.
Yes, that's right.
They are not built as states, meaning they don't have the right to leave or join anywhere, and they are not based on a national principle. Like we have 25 regions, there will be 12 lands in that territory. It's like how we had the economic councils. Well, you're younger than me, but maybe you remember. Under Khrushchev, there were economic councils, and they were very useful, one of Khrushchev's best reorganizations.
Because you could do it in that territory, and also having more rights locally, you could realize more opportunities, especially economic ones.
Now, we've united the three Galician regions into this Galician Assembly. This is not political separatism. We are for a united Ukraine, for a single Ukrainian state. But right away, we were able to start economic projects that one region alone couldn't manage. That's exactly what I mean when I talk about changing the administrative structure in the future. We used to have governorates. Sumy region, for example, was created in 1939 when Stalin combined parts of Chernihiv, Poltava, Slobozhanshchina, and Kharkiv regions into a new region. Because they needed to appoint more chiefs, because every person had to be under greater control to create more different administrations and so on. That's exactly what we're talking about.